What's this?
Well, we so rarely get a chance to celebrate, but this time we must.
Celebrate?
Yes. It's Christmas. Don't you remember the police station, Christmas?
So it was, yes.
Here's a toast. A happy Christmas to all of us.
Same to you, Doctor. Sir?
Incidentally, a happy Christmas to all of you at home.
A dream to some.
A nightmare to others! Lord! Oh, Jesus Christ!
But I will give you a message. The message of death!
Come on, I let fucking couch! Make no attempt to capture them. They must be exterminated.
Matron, take them away!
Stardust speaks to you.
That's not his name. Who is it? Doctor Who?
Well, hello there. It's the season 4 finale. It's the Christmas special of We Need to Talk About ... We're sat in a pub, I know, for a change.
Who knew? Who knew? Us in a pub?
I know. Just out there, just random.
Very random.
So I am the Big Daddy D, David Mabley, and I like walking through the dark. It's mysterious.
And I am Luke Murphy, and I am from another time, another place.
What, Gallifrey?
No, Cumbria. And just before we get full disclosure, because we probably will get this, we actually recorded this episode last week. It's now a week on, so we actually recorded this in true Doctor Who fashion.
Yes.
We recorded this edition in the past, and now we are in the future. And then you are watching this in the future, which makes this the past. Confused? You will be.
Wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey. So yes, as you probably gathered, we're going back to talking about classic Doctor Who. Now, the last time we talked about classic Doctor Who on this channel was actually during the pandemic.
Yeah.
During lockdown.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
And I think it's safe to say that it was
comforting.
It was comforting.
It was our happy place.
Yeah. It was something that helped us get through those awkward times where we couldn't meet up in a pub.
No,
we couldn't even meet up in the bunker.
No.
So we thought it'd be quite fun, seeing as this year is the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who. We thought it'd be quite funny if we went back to the very beginning and took a look at the very first Doctor Who serial, An Unearthly Child. So, just in case you haven't switched on a television in the last 60 years,
where have you been, seriously?
Or simply have no idea who Doctor Who is, well, strap yourselves in, folks, because we're going to go right back to the very beginning.
You may be a doctor, but I am the Doctor. The original, you might say.
The lead character in the Doctor Who television series is a mysterious figure known only as the Doctor, who comes from the distant planet of Gallifrey and is part of a race of people known as the Time Lords, which is the oldest civilization in the galaxy. The Time Lords have mastery over time and space and have long considered it to be their duty to watch over history, but to never interfere.
So, luckily for us, the Doctor doesn't agree with these practices from his race. The Doctor isn't one for just sitting back and watching events unfold. In fact, he got rather bored with doing that. So he decided quickly on that he rather likes getting involved in what goes on through time and space.
Time Lord, but they're forbidden to interfere. This one calls himself the Doctor, and does nothing else but interfere.
So, he goes off on various adventures in a stolen time machine that just so happens to resemble a police telephone box from Great Britain in the 1960s. The time machine is known as the TARDIS, which stands for Time and Relative Dimensions in Space. And there was a point where the Doctor's marvellous machine could change its appearance so that it could fit in whenever in time and space he would end up. But the chameleon circuit was broken at some point, and the Doctor has simply never got around to fixing it.
It's still a police box. Why hasn't it changed? Dear, dear. How very disturbing.
Amongst their many abilities, the Time Lords are also able to cheat death by regenerating their bodies. But in doing so, they undergo a complete change in their appearance and personality. It is thanks to this ability that the series has been able to run as long as it has done so, with this year marking the 60th anniversary and with 14 Doctors in canon to date. Well, actually, it's 17 if you're including War Doctors, Fugitive Doctors, Upcoming Doctors, and whatever the hell David Tennant's return turns out to be.
As a result of this, it's not uncommon for the Doctor to bump into some of his other incarnations from time to time.
Oh, so you're my replacements. A dandy and a clown.
A bit harsh, Billy. Today is still the longest running science fiction television programme of all time, and with this year marking not only a landmark anniversary but also a brand new regeneration of the Doctor, along with the reappearance of an older one, we thought that it would be quite fun to go all the way back to the very beginning where it all started.
The creation of Doctor Who can be credited to three main people. BBC's head of drama, Sidney Newman, the head of the script department, Donald Wilson, who would later go on to become head of serials, and staff writer Cecil Webber. These three men were all, thankfully, working together at the BBC in the year 1963. The BBC, which, for our viewers who aren't in Britain, means British Broadcasting Corporation, and not something that you'd search for on an X-rated website.
You are a terrible, terrible person. The BBC had previously made a number of one-off science fiction dramas and short series, most notably the three Quatermass serials that were broadcast throughout the 1950s, and yes, that was literally another excuse for me to mention Quatermass on this here programme.
You've done that on purpose, haven't you?
I still have.
Recognising that there was a need for a television programme on a Saturday afternoon to slot in between the sports coverage on Grandstand and a pop music programme, Jukebox Jury, the BBC approached Newman, a Canadian media producer whom the corporation had managed to lure away from his previous job with commercial rivals ABC Television in London. Many of Newman's contributions as head of drama over there have been crime drama serials such as The Avengers.
And I have to point out here, these are the proper ones.
Yes.
The proper Avengers. The proper Avengers. Not the Johnny-come-lately American ones with all the fancy suits and hammers and what have you. The proper Avengers, where all you need is an umbrella and a bowler hat.
And on a black man in a tight-fitting catsuit.
Or Diana Rigg in a tight-fitting catsuit.
Yes. This new programme would be a semi-educational science fiction serial series about an eccentric old man, possibly of alien origin, who would travel throughout time and space, accompanied by his granddaughter. Newman knew exactly who he wanted to have as the producer on this new show, and, in what would be a very progressive move at the time, Verity Lambert became not only the youngest producer at the BBC, she was only 28 at the time, but also its only female producer, when Newman approached her to work on this new show. Newman had crossed paths with Lambert before when she'd been a production assistant at ABC Television, and he was immediately impressed with her enthusiasm and energy, or as he called it, her piss and vinegar. Which I'm assuming is either a Canadian phrase or just a phrase that was said in the 60s.
It's a great phrase.
Either way, Sidney Newman might be head of drama, but I wouldn't put him in charge of a fish and chip shop.
Absolutely not.
And in an even more progressive move than a young female producer, Lambert also hired Waris Hussein to direct the first serial. The youngest director that the BBC had on staff, and also British Indian. So one of, if not the only, non-white director on staff.
When anybody talks about Doctor Who these days in a non-complimentary fashion, they use the phrase "woke to Who," yes. And you know, and they've even done so with Star Trek as well, which brilliantly.
Strong female characters. Oh no, we can't have that.
Yeah, brilliantly. Just very quickly going on about Star Trek. I've
opened a can of worms.
Yeah, you have opened up a can of worms. Somebody wrote on Twitter or X or whatever it's called these days.
I refuse to call it X. It's still
ridiculous.
Twitter.
It's still Twitter. Somebody wrote on something along the lines of, "Oh, when did Star Trek become all woke?" Which then was commented on by George Takei himself.
Oh my!
Indeed, who wrote on, "Have you ever watched our programme?" Which is brilliant. And again, we have Verity Lambert, young female, first female producer, youngest female producer, only female producer in the BBC, and she's producing this. And then Roy Hussein, who then goes on to, well, Boris Hussein is legendary. I mean, this is where things started for him. And he's massively well respected as sort of a director, producer and writer. So, sorry guys, it's always been.
Doctor Who first appeared on BBC television on Saturday the 23rd of November 1963 and would be broadcast exactly 80 seconds later than the original scheduled programme time. The reason for this? Well, there was the news breaking that US President John F. Kennedy had been shot and killed the previous day. So, with the newspapers and news broadcasts full of the shocking news of this assassination, audiences briefly had a release from the real world, as the first ever programme would be broadcast of a show that would become one of the longest running science fiction television programmes of all time, which gripped the interest of a nation.
Now, Lambert knew just the person to cast as the mysterious Doctor. William Hartnell had already had a storied career on stage and screen at this point, but he had become typecast as playing stern-faced characters like detective inspectors or army sergeants.
Now, I'm a quiet, reasonable, humane man. I know. My mother told me.
It was a role he played well, having a fierce, commanding voice and an authoritative presence. But, by unusual circumstance, he would end up at one point starring in the film alongside another future Doctor Who actor, John Pertwee, and ended up acting alongside several cast members who would later go on to become part of the successful Carry On team. In actual fact, Hartnell appears in the very, very first film of that series, Carry On Sergeant, as the ubiquitous Sergeant.
Right, any questions?
Can I report sick, please?
Hartnell began to tire of being typecast as the same kind of character, but it was his kinder, gentler performance in This Sporting Life that gave him a chance to show off more of his acting range. And it was this performance that convinced Lambert that she had found the right person for the role of the Time Lord.
You tell me, Frank. You tell me.
1,000 quid.
Nay.
God, I love that film. That is the best sport film ever made.
Yeah.
I mean, you can forget about, even though they're very, very good, like Any Given Sunday and Coach Carter and various other bits, even Escape to Victory. Give me This Sporting Life. Love that. Love that. Love that film. And do you know why? Because it's set in the north and it's about rugby league.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, William Hartnell and Richard Harris.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's brilliant in that.
Being proper northern.
Being proper northern. Although reluctant at first to take on a role for what was seen as a children's television programme, Hartnell began to love his time as the Doctor, becoming a television hero to children everywhere, and firmly establishing himself as a household name for years to come. Hartnell would often describe his role as the Doctor as being a sort of a cross between the Wizard of Oz and Father Christmas. He could play the role as stern and grumpy one moment, and then playful and mischievous the next. But the Doctor would not be travelling alone.
At first, the idea of the Doctor having a much younger companion was dismissed, until Newman insisted that such a character was needed because, in his own words, just imagine I've got a cigar in my hand, you need a kid to get into trouble and make mistakes.
Right, was that your attempt at a Canadian accent?
Yes.
Right, okay, moving on. Right, producer Verity Lambert and director Roy Hussein first set eyes on Carol Ann Ford, spotting the young actress on a monitor screen during the recording of a drama in a nearby studio. Ford had begun her acting career at an early age, with film appearances as early as 1948, and her most notable acting role, up to this point, had been as the blind French girl Bettina in the 1962 film adaptation of The Day of the Triffids.
That's right. You've got a good sense of humor, too. I can tell because you've got the nicest laugh lines around your mouth.
She was only 23 at the time, and she was married with children, although you wouldn't have guessed it from her appearance, as she still had the youthful look of a teenager. So this made her an excellent casting choice for the role of the title character's granddaughter, who would be known only as Susan.
Everything about Susan would be slightly off or unusual, such as her knowledge of events that hadn't happened yet, or her intelligence, which is well above that of someone her age. Even her hairstyle was depicted as something that was not on this world. Although that probably won't be as obvious to a modern audience. The BBC actually enlisted the help of legendary hair design specialist Vidal Sassoon. Yes, him of the shampoos and conditioners that you see on your supermarkets.
Of shampoo for him?
Yes.
Of shampoo for him?
Yes, yes.
Fabulous.
To come up with a special hairstyle for Susan that would be this sort of short, spiky look that would look completely ahead of its time. And it certainly worked, as it later became part of 1960s fashionable hairstyles.
The character was originally pitched to Carol as a young woman of action who would fight off her foes with martial arts and telepathic abilities. Carol had a background in dance and ballet, so she would have been very, very capable of showing off such athletic abilities on the screen. This would have made for an interesting dynamic, where you would have had the older, wiser Doctor as the brains of the group, with the younger granddaughter essentially acting as his bodyguard as well as his travelling companion.
So again, think back to
the Avengers.
The Avengers, Honor Blackman in the Avengers.
Yeah.
And that's not an excuse now for me to be putting in a fight scene of Honor Blackman in a cat suit. Not at all.
No.
It is a shame, though, that none of these abilities ever became part of the finished character. Apart from a couple of moments where Susan jumps on a caveman's back in the first serial or helps to fight off a Dalek in the second, Susan showed absolutely no fighting ability whatsoever. And as far as having telepathic abilities, well, she does seem to be able to find her grandfather very quickly in the first serial when he's kidnapped. She's able to locate him pretty much straight away. And she's able to find her way back to the TARDIS as well very quickly. So that would suggest there's a psychic link between the two there. She also seems to display some sort of psychic communication with the Sensorites in another serial, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Oh. All right. But none of the others must be harmed. Grandfather, it was the only way. They knew I'd agree.
Agree? To what?
To go down with them to their planet. Otherwise, we'll all be killed.
Not only this, but Susan would regularly become a character that needed to be rescued or needed emotional support, as she was often prone to bursting out into tearful hysterics. You would have thought that someone that has travelled through time and space with her grandfather should be used to being in danger, or would have some experience in dealing with difficult situations. Again, it was originally intended that this character had physical and mental fighting abilities, but unfortunately, Susan is often reduced to a gibbering, screaming, nervous wreck. And I think it's fair to say that many modern audiences would find her utter lack of character development to be somewhat annoying.
So instead of Susan being the woman of action, the role of the physical hero went to science teacher Ian Chesterton. Oh yes, played by William Russell. Now he had also appeared as the title character in ITV's The Adventures of Sir Lancelot. So therefore he was no stranger to swashbuckling adventures. Ian is very quick to reprimand the actions of the early days of the First Doctor. It might be the Doctor's TARDIS, but Ian is very much in charge. In time, the relationship between Ian and the Doctor softens, and they eventually become incredibly good friends. But for these first few stories, the two men do not get on well with each other.
I suppose you could say that the Doctor's time spent travelling with Ian and Barbara changed him into a better person, softening his gruff and paranoid personality into a moral guardian, something that would be a constant part of the Doctor's character, no matter what he would end up looking like. The Doctor would become a warmer, more caring hero who would fight for the downtrodden and the oppressed. It can be argued that Ian and Barbara were a big part of that change of the character.
Don't you think it would be better if we parted under more friendly circumstances? Say, over a drink?
Yes.
With that in mind, it's a shame that neither Ian or Barbara never really appeared in classic Doctor Who again, even as cameo appearances after they departed the TARDIS. Jacqueline Hill, who played Barbara, would show up in Doctor Who again during Tom Baker's run in the serial Megalos, but she plays a completely different character. It's a shame that the Doctor doesn't even acknowledge her similar appearance to his old travelling companion.
As a history teacher, Barbara is usually the first person to identify the details of the time period that the TARDIS crew have found themselves in for this particular episode, and she's also extremely good at analysing the problem that they find themselves in. But she's also the first person to actively attempt to change history, something that her and the Doctor would often argue about.
You can't rewrite history. Not one line.
After their eventual departure from the TARDIS, Ian and Barbara wouldn't really be mentioned again. The closest that Ian and Barbara would even get to being referenced was a passing comment on an episode of the wonderful Sarah Jane Adventures.
This couple in Cambridge, both professors, Ian and Barbara Chesterton. Rumour has it, they've never aged. Not since the 60s. I wonder.
Ian would eventually show up again in the 2022 special The Power of the Doctor, alongside several other former companions, in an appearance that broke the Guinness World Record for longest gap between TV appearances, at 57 years and 119 days. But once again, we're getting ahead of ourselves here.
I mean, the Guinness World Records will have a record for anything.
Yeah.
I mean, this is incredibly specific. I wonder what I mean,
that's jamming Oreos into mouth.
I wonder who held the record before William Russell.
It'd be interesting.
It would be interesting to know that, actually. So, TV production in the 1960s. So, recording the programme itself had its own challenges. Modern television programmes are shot in several takes, like a film, and digital editing suites can hide some of the mistakes made during filming to ensure that the finished result is presentable. But British television programmes back in the 1960s, including Doctor Who, were filmed usually in one studio over the course of a single afternoon or evening. The actors had to learn their lines throughout the week, and when it came to filming the programme, they would be continuously acting out the performance as if it was part of a stage play.
And, just like a stage play, actors would often wait patiently off screen for their cue to walk back onto the set. Recording the programme was an incredibly costly and time-consuming process, and filming only ever stopped for scenery changes or costume changes. So that meant if any mistakes were made, usually they were completely ignored and the filming continued. Therefore, it's not unusual in some of these earlier episodes to see the cameraman bump into part of the scenery, or for one of the actors wearing a bulky alien costume to walk directly into the camera.
Yeah, and it would also mean that if an actor messed up their lines, then they would usually just continue as if nothing had happened. And this remained in the finished production.
They may have been anti-radiation gloves. Drugs. And if you'd had your shoes on, my boy, you could have lent her hers. I can't improve at this very moment. I can't prove at this very moment. Would you like something to eat?
No, thanks, I'm not hungry.
Oh, child, that's unusual. I do hope your effects outside the ship hasn't affected you too much.
It isn't frozen, is it?
No, impossible in this temperature. Besides, it's too warm. Yes, well, I didn't want to,
We're running out of time. Check the fornicator. Complicator.
Okay.
Hello, is that HR?
Don't ruin my innocence. Please. Anything else? That's fine, but don't ruin my youthful innocence of Doctor Who, please.
And if you'd have had your shoes on, my boy, you could have lent her hers.
Oh, God. Right. So, despite these costs, the very first episode actually ended up being filmed twice. Now, there are very little differences between the two versions of the first episode. I mean, the cast are the same, the story is the same, the sets are the same. Okay, so there are a few slight differences in the clothes that the characters are wearing. But upon watching both versions back to back, the most noticeable change from the original pilot is the characterisation of the Doctor and Susan. Now, in the original pilot, both of them come across as perhaps a little too sinister than what was probably intended. Now, Susan's strange sort of Rorschach ink painting that she makes, or her odd dancing in the classroom, for example.
We also get the Doctor laughing in a rather unpleasant way when Ian and Barbara realise that they've been locked in the TARDIS and can't get out. His playful, mischievous nature isn't there at all, and if anything, he comes across as rather cruel and angry. These are only subtle changes, but it must have been felt that these changes were desperately needed to justify having the entire episode being completely reshot again.
Now, there was also a number of technical issues that occurred during the filming of this pilot. Now, the most noticeable of these were the TARDIS doors not closing properly during the first take, causing a lot of banging and clattering in the background, whilst the Doctor was trying to speak to Susan about the arrival of the two teachers.
people are known to you, I believe.
What are you doing here? They're two of my school teachers.
Is that your excuse for this unwarrantable intrusion? You had no right to invite them here. I blame you for this, Susan.
What's happening to the bloody doors?
Now, this would only lead to the rising costs in the show's production, and already the BBC was starting to get cold feet over the show and very, very nearly cancelled it before it could even get going. Mark Gatiss' superb 2013 film An Adventure in Time and Space is a great insight into the struggle to get the programme approved and on air, and some of the behind-the-scenes dramas that went on. It also sadly portrays the health problems that Hartnell was struggling with at the time, that kept to himself until he found that he was no longer well enough to continue playing the role.
Oh, damn these onions.
Our gateway into the world of the Doctor is through a young teenage schoolgirl called Susan Foreman, an incredibly gifted but surprisingly ill-informed student at Coal Hill School. She has a wealth of knowledge seemingly far beyond her age and is extremely intelligent. I mean, ridiculously intelligent. We're talking about Shelton from the Big Bang Theory levels of intelligence here. But there is something very unusual about her, almost alien.
I'll return it tomorrow.
Oh, that's not necessary. Keep it until you've finished it.
I have finished it.
Oh, where do you live, Susan? I'm giving Miss Wright a lift. I've room for one more.
No thank you, Mr. Chesterton. I like walking through the dark. It's mysterious.
See you in the morning.
I expect so. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, Susan.
That's not right.
Now, this peculiar behaviour is noticed by two of her school teachers, science teacher Ian Chesterton and history teacher Barbara Wright, who become genuinely concerned over her. It is subtly hinted that they think she might be getting mistreated at home, and the address that she's given the school as her home address actually belongs to a local scrapyard.
So, Ian and Barbara follow Susan home in the dead of night. In Ian's car. Ooh. Well, that's aged like a fine murder, hasn't it? There's no way you get away with that now. I mean, blimey, somebody call Ofsted.
Silly, isn't it? I feel frightened. As if we were about to interfere in something that is best left alone.
Ian and Barbara end up following Susan into the scrapyard, where they come across an old police telephone box, as well as a strange old man pottering around, acting rather suspiciously. As they force their way into the police box, in which they believe that Susan is being kept imprisoned, it is dramatically revealed that the inside of the telephone box is far bigger than it is on the outside. It cannot be overstated how impressive this first reveal of the TARDIS's dimensional transcendentalism must have been. It's something we just take for granted now. I mean, we're so used to a new companion remarking that it's bigger on the inside. That it's become an established trope of the series.
Inside than out.
Oh, I say.
Why is it so much bigger inside than it is outside?
It's very peculiar indeed.
You know, it's actually bigger inside than it is on the outside.
I know.
How do you do that then? Well, it's bigger on the inside than the outside.
That would explain the spatial displacement we experienced as we passed over the threshold.
The inside's bigger than the outside?
Yeah.
Much bigger on the inside.
It's bigger on the inside, that's all.
Oh, that's all. It's bigger on the inside.
Is it?
I hadn't noticed.
It's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside.
Oh, I know all that bit. It's bigger. I mean, it's bigger on the inside.
Ah, right. Yes. Bigger on the inside. Do you like it?
I thought it'd be cleaner.
Cleaner?
It's bigger on the inside.
The bigger on the inside phone box.
Smaller on the outside.
Okay. That is a first.
Oh, it's bigger.
Yes.
On the inside.
Look, we need to concentrate.
There it is.
Yeah, I know where you're going with this, but I need you to calm down.
On the outside.
My grasp of the universal constants of physical reality has been changed. Forever. I've always wanted to see that done properly.
But to a 1960s audience, this was an amazing experience. This is a testament to director Waris Hussein's cinematic vision for this little slice of tea time adventure, from the clever editing to the startlingly effective contrast in lighting, from the creepy darkness of the scrapyard to the brilliant brightness of the TARDIS interior. It's even more impressive when you consider the production constraints at the time, which we've already mentioned. Millions of young people who, bear in mind, were living in a country where the rubble of the Blitz was still piled up in major cities, and with the moon landing still 6 years away, were suddenly brought along from a dreary and drab landscape into this magical world across the cosmos. Or indeed, from a mild curiosity in a junkyard to a great spirit of adventure.
Now, the first Doctor doesn't introduce himself as the Doctor, or even as Doctor Who. Susan was enrolled at the school under the surname Foreman, although it's possible that she took that surname from a sign displayed in the scrapyard, and she does tell her school teachers that her grandfather is a doctor. So, when Ian and Barbara refer to the Doctor as Dr. Foreman, he simply doesn't know what they are talking about.
Just open the doors, Dr. Foreman.
Hey, Doctor Who? What are you talking about?
They're so sure, Ian.
Yes, I know.
And remember the difference between the outside of the police box and the inside.
Yes, I know, but are you going to open the doors or
No.
The Doctor, well, he essentially abducts these two school teachers that have found out his alien secret, and then he whisks them away in his TARDIS, revealing that this machine can travel anywhere in space and time, although the Doctor doesn't know how to steer it at this point, so they could end up literally anywhere. The Doctor and his unwilling travelling companions find themselves trapped 100,000 years in the past, where they end up caught in the middle of a power struggle between two prehistoric cavemen who demand to know the secret of fire, and this is the key skill that all leaders of their tribe must have. After seeing the Doctor smoking a pipe, a bad habit that he would soon drop shortly after this story, the cavemen believe that this strangely dressed old man and his companions can teach them this secret.
And this is why the Doctor never smoked again after this episode. Getting bashed on the head and dragged away to literally a cave of skulls by a bunch of grunting prehistoric folk is enough to put anyone off from ever lighting up again.
Yeah.
This has been an anti-smoking announcement.
This is what you should do, Rishi.
Rather than saying smoking causes lung cancer or
basically, you know, bringing in it's illegal to sell tobacco to 16-year-olds, and then you know it's illegal to sell tobacco to 17-year-olds, and just take them off to the, you know, bash them over the head or something.
Just have prehistoric cavemen just roaming every single street. They see someone
fire,
see someone lighting up, bump, bonk them on the head, drag them off to a cave.
Still,
modern Britain, everybody.
Yeah, still, we won't have to suffer that much longer. Oh, political.
A little bit of politics there, love it. This isn't a bad first story to get into Doctor Who. I mean, don't be expecting a thrilling adventure where the Doctor and his companions have to fend off saber-toothed tigers or dodge past herds of woolly mammoths or even get to ride on a triceratops like Matt Smith did. No, none of that, because the BBC simply did not have the budget for anything like that at the time. No, they spend most of this first adventure being locked up in a cave somewhere, whilst the rest of the characters in this story have a bit of a grunt and a moan about this magic fire that they can't seem to produce.
Yes, he kidnaps Ian and Barbara, basically, to try and keep his secret, even though Susan doesn't want him to do that. In this story, he's going to murder somebody by bashing their head in with a rock. The whole of the next adventure after this only happens because he self-sabotages the TARDIS.
Yep.
And in the next story after that, something goes wrong in the TARDIS, and immediately he starts blaming Ian and Barbara of sabotaging the TARDIS.
Yeah.
So he is not a hero.
No, definitely not.
He's the first sort of three stories. So there's there's the Daleks, and then there's Age of Destruction. Those three.
Let's illustrate that.
Yeah. These three here. This gets the purpose of these three stories is to get the original TARDIS team kind of like on the same page. and to get them working together, they might not like one another. They might find some of them tiresome and crotchety and what have you, but he gets them on the same page. You know, it's these three stories that get them to trust one another. But I still don't know whether or not the Doctor's the actual hero.
Again, it's very much Ian in this. Ian and Barbara at this point, isn't it? The Doctor's just along for the ride, and it's him that causes a lot of the trouble. To be honest, it's him that whisks them away in the TARDIS to Caveman. And like you said, it's him that insists that they go and explore the city because he's like, "Oh yes, we've run out of mercury." He's like, "No, you bloody haven't. No, you haven't." And then when everything starts going to shit in the third story, his immediate reaction is, "Right, it's your fault. You've done something.
You've done something. What have you done?" And we might go a little bit, talk about this a little bit, further on in the review. I don't think the Doctor becomes the Doctor, i.e., the hero, until much later in the first Doctor's run, and possibly near the end. I might talk a little bit about sort of when it's in the War Machines, by the way, when that happens. Certainly for me, when it happens. But yeah, he's not the hero.
And that was the one that you lent me, sort of just going off on a bit of a tangent. When, prior to us all having to sort of self-isolate with COVID, you lent me a stack of Doctor Who DVDs, and you picked out like your favourite story from each one, from the first Doctor all the way up till Sylvester McCoy. And the DVD that you lent me of the first Doctor was the War Machines.
Was the War Machines?
Yeah, that was like your personal favourite that you. Picked out.
I really like that. I really like that story. It brings, the TARDIS lands in sort of modern Britain of 1966. They filmed it in and around what was then newly finished sort of the BT tower, the GPO tower. And then there's a scene right at the sort of the kind of like the cliffhanger scene at the end of episode 3, where everybody's the Wotan's War Machines are out on the streets of London and what have you. Everybody else is started taking a backward step and thinking, what's going on here? And then the Doctor says, nah, I'm not having any of this. And he's the cliffhanger is him striding forward to meet these War Machines and taking them head on.
Yeah.
That's when he's the Doctor. That's when he becomes the Doctor.
The Doctor is quite nasty to begin with, especially in the original pilot episode that never got not broadcast. And like again, other versions of the Doctor would show that sometimes he would have a dark side beneath all that eccentric whimsiness. For example, the second Doctor would be quite a whimsical character, but would have a dark side to him. Peter Davison was my Doctor sort of growing up, but then when he regenerated into Colin Baker and started, throttling Perry, who, let's be honest, I rather liked her as well. For
Nicholas Bryant was lovely, and still is.
I was like, I don't think I like Doctor Who anymore now. That was something that we'd also see in Sylvester McCoy's Doctor. And
the play of Sylvester McCoy's 7th Doctor, the play of 1,000 chessboards, and he's winning on every single one of them.
That's it. David Tennant's Doctor would have quite a dark side to him.
Which is actually a great shame that we never got to see that. We never really got to see that. We never got to see the Time Lord victorious. Because if you think about it, when he goes absolutely properly mental and declares himself to be the Time Lord victorious, we don't actually see anything from the end of The Waters of Mars. If it was the Time Lord victorious taking on that version of the Master in the End of Time, hello, that would have been nice, but no sooner had he become the Time Lord victorious, he regretted it immediately. I know there was some other stuff about that.
We did see a little glimpse of it though, like for example what he did with the Family of Blood, trapping you in every single mirror in existence.
Yes.
Throwing you into an event horizon, trapping you in time.
Yeah. I like it. Oh, human nature's great.
Yes.
I really like that.
There was definitely some dark sides to David Tennant's side. David Tennant's 10th Doctor.
Peter Capaldi as well. Peter Capaldi started off as very, very unlikable.
Yes.
The character of Clara was not sure who he was. But again, over time, he became nicer and what have you. So again, this is something that starts with this guy.
But making the Doctor an anti-hero would have been a mistake from the start. I mean, each time that a new Doctor has been introduced that wasn't a particularly nice person, i.e., like we mentioned, the 6th Doctor and the start of the 12th Doctor's run, it didn't go down well with the fans. And the production team recognised pretty quickly that making the Doctor really not a very nice person was not the way to go.
But it is incredible that they got it so right straight from the beginning. The first episode still holds up incredibly well even today. Well, it should do, considering that it was the second attempt to film it. But the latter 3 chapters of this serial can be a bit of a slog, with the story just becoming a caveman, asking if anybody's got a light, whilst the standard capture, escape, repeat narrative goes on. But it was a new show. It was experimental, it was on a ridiculously low budget and filmed on an extremely tight schedule. So it is surprising that this first episode is of such incredibly high quality. Those following episodes, whilst good, were perhaps not the best story to launch with.
Perhaps if the story went straight from 1960s London to the planet of Skaro, the location of the second serial, rather than 100,000 years ago, then it would have been a better one to start the show with. I mean, furthermore, going from London to Skaro was exactly what the first Doctor Who movie ended up doing, which we've already covered previously on the show in length.
Although it is interesting to note, and I know that we're looking at an Unearthly Child now. We previously looked at Doctor Who and the Daleks and Daleks Invasion of Earth 2150 AD. Interior of the TARDIS, better in the TV show than it is on film.
Yes, yes. But then again,
a lot better.
In the film, the Doctor is very much human, isn't he?
Yeah.
So the inside of his TARDIS is probably going to look like the inside of someone's garden shed.
Well, exactly, yes. The story is very, very well acted. It's intriguing, it's a little bit unnerving, it's wonderfully dripping in atmosphere and well conceived in every aspect, as our mismatched team of heroes desperately try to survive and escape from the cave dwellers, who ironically are also locked in their own desperate struggle for survival.
Of particular note is when one caveman, Carl, tries to blame the Doctor and his companions for the murder of the tribe's elder woman, when it was in fact Carl that did the dirty deed himself. But the Doctor manages to trick Carl into accidentally confessing to the murder by getting him to compare their weapons.
This knife has no blood on it. It is a finer knife than yours.
My cow says it's a bad knife.
This knife can cut and stab. I have never seen a better knife.
I will show you one.
This knife shows what it has done. There is blood on it.
Carl barely has time to realise his mistake when the entire tribe turn on him and banish him from the cave forever. He would return later on to challenge for leadership of the tribe, but gets a boulder to the head for his troubles. Bizarrely enough, for what would be quite a violent death, we don't get any sound effects at all for this, not even a dull thud. I know that this couldn't be too gruesome, as it's going out as an intended family tea time viewing, but to have no sound at all seems a bit strange.
Luckily, this allows our heroes a chance to sneak out of the cave thanks to Susan coming up with an idea to take some flaming torches and place them on top of some of the skulls from the charmingly named Cave of Skulls. The cavemen start to freak out over the appearance of what looks like a heavy metal album cover from the 90s, and this is the distraction that the group needs to finally escape and return back to the TARDIS.
I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean that Ian and Barbara can go back home, though. I mean, don't forget that not only can't the Doctor actually fly this thing, but the navigation system is knackered too. So when the Doctor attempts to take everyone back to 1963, it turns out that the coordinates have been lost, and instead the group find themselves landing on an alien planet in an unknown time instead. The story concludes with the group deciding to get themselves cleaned up and then go exploring. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Oh dear.
And this is where the original first serial of Doctor Who ends, with the second one already being neatly lined up for the returning audience the following week. But the production of this very first serial was not an easy one. It went over budget, it ran over time. The very first episode had to be refilmed entirely from scratch. Oh, and let's not forget that little thing that the very beginning of the show was completely overshadowed by the JFK assassination, which was literally announced seconds before the first episode was broadcast. With all that in mind, it's amazing that the show continued afterwards, considering all these hurdles. The fact that the same main character is still going on 60 years later with the same concept, the same time machine, the same theme music. And still with the same amount of enormous success, just shows what a brilliant idea it all was in the first place.
But back in 1963, the BBC were already planning to pull the plug on the entire show. Shooting the prehistoric storyline had been costly, and the audience's reception after that first shock of seeing the inside of the TARDIS had soon gotten lukewarm after that. The decision was made that the show would be cancelled after its original commissioned run of 13 episodes. But then, something changed. But again, that's a story for another time.
So this very first serial is not without its problems, and again, I probably wouldn't recommend a new Doctor Who fan to watch this first. However, for the sake of nostalgia, for the sake of understanding television of the 1960s, and for the sake of getting some insight into everyone's favourite time-travelling hero, do give it a watch at some point, even if you have to get the DVD version of it rather than being able to watch it on the iPlayer.
Yeah.
It does show what made the Doctor the man we know. And it all starts here, in a police box, in a junkyard, and with an unearthly child. Pub.
You're trying to help me.
Well, fear makes companions of all of us. That's right.
I never once thought you were afraid.
Fear is with all of us and always will be. Just like that other sensation that lives with it.
What's that?
Well, your companion referred to it. Hope. Hope, that's right.
Hello again.
Hello, we're back in the pub. As you know, Christmas is a time for giving, so I've got a present for you, Luke.
Oh. The new dematerialisation circuit.
Yes.
Hang on a minute. You get me this next year. And all my knowledge and codes of time travel. The Time Lords have forgiven me. I'm off. No. It's a prop.
It's a prop.
It's a prop. Yes. So So thank you for rejoining us. Shall we say, from our past selves to our future selves, which is in the here and the now, where we just have a look at Unearthly Child, the story that started it all.
But funnily enough, the story that started it, but not the story that guaranteed Doctor Who's success, because it wasn't until the Daleks came along that Doctor Who became a success. They were ready for cancelling this show.
Yes, they were.
After Unearthly Child, it had been. It'd gone over budget, it had taken too long. After that first reveal of the TARDIS, the audience's reaction was a tad lukewarm.
Yeah.
But it's not until the Daleks came along that Doctor Who became a success. So, quite ironically, the Daleks saved Doctor Who.
The Daleks saved Doctor Who, and after those, because that was the initial 13 episodes. So 4 episodes of Unearthly Child, and then the Daleks, which was 6
episodes,
and then
Edge of Destruction, which was 2 episodes.
So by Edge of Destruction, or midway through the Daleks, they knew that things were going to continue, and then all these other stories from the first year that were on the back burner, that were being developed, but they didn't know whether or not they were going to do them or not. That's when we're kicking into high gear. So, and then in that first year we had these 3 stories. Then we had
Marco Polo, which sadly is one of those episodes and one of those stories, and we talked about this during this Wicker Man review.
Yeah,
where in a huge lack of foresight, the BBC used to junk old episodes of Doctor Who. Once they'd been broadcast, they felt that they had no value in keeping them, so they either taped over them or chucked them in a skip.
And it wasn't just Doctor Who. It wasn't just like that was just the practice of the time.
A lot of stuff that Waris Hussein did for the BBC
is gone.
not just Doctor Who, but a lot of other programmes that he did.
Yeah, and I think BBC wise, I think one of the only ones, or one of the only truly complete ones, is Unearthly Child.
Yeah,
certainly from the 60s. I think he did some stuff in the 70s. But yeah, I mean, from that first year, the 3 stories that you mentioned, Marco Polo, the Aztecs, which is wonderful.
The Aztec. This historical one's probably not the strongest one. The historical stories would get a lot better later on. The Aztecs being a fantastic example of that. I also quite like the Romans as well. I rather like that one, even though it's a bit silly in places. I do rather like that.
It's a bit silly.
It's very silly.
It's a bit silly.
It's very silly.
Have you recently watched it?
It gets it almost becomes like Carry On in
it is. It's massively Carry On.
It's just missing William Hartnell going, infamy, infamy. They've all got it, infamy.
I've got a funny feeling that William Hartnell would never have done that, but anyways, we will move swiftly on. So, so thank you very much for listening to our inane ramblings and probably my inane rantings about Doctor Who, because let's be honest with you, it's not like I've ever mentioned Doctor Who before.
To be honest with you, if we do any more Doctor Who, I don't think I even need to be on camera. I think I just need to just set the camera up, put you in front of it and say, right, Luke, Edge of Destruction, go, and just let you just...
There's nothing better than a good Doctor Who 2-parter.
Yeah.
And Edge of Destruction is the first one of these really, really good Doctor Who 2-parters. That's what everybody knows that. So with the 60th anniversary, the iPlayer's got all of Doctor Who back.
Yep.
Most of all of Doctor Who back.
But I'm not touching.
We're not going there.
We're not going there. I'm not touching that with a large ball.
There's nothing like a good 2-parter. There's nothing like a good 2-parter. One of the first things I did when it all came back, I thought, right, I've got an hour. I just want to watch a 2-part story. I watched The Awakening from 1984, which is very interesting actually, because of English Civil War and sort of dark forebodings and what have you. So, in effect, it's actually folk horror. But anyways, enough of that. Everything's connected.
Oh God, is our folk horror trilogy going to become a quadrilogy? Quadrilogy.
No. We only need to finish finish that off. We only need Which Final General
next year.
Which
season 5,
as luck would have it, is actually getting a reissue next year.
Oh, right. There we go. Even more reason to do it then.
Yeah, it's getting a reissue next year. Much in the same way as the Wicker Man this year.
Nice.
The 4K restoration.
Nice.
Which Finder General is getting a 4K restoration next year. As also is the Blood and Satan Squad.
It is, yes.
So yes, we will finish that off. We will do Which Finder General next year. That is an absolute lock-in for next year's reviews. Don't expect it immediately. It'll probably be mid when it comes out.
Well, we need to get through Christmas first, mate.
Well, absolutely. Merry Christmas. Once again, seriously, do you have nothing better to do than to listen to us two?
Apparently not, because we're up to 5,030 subscribers.
5,030, that's wonderful.
Yes.
And you are all beautiful human beings.
You're all quite mad.
But you're quite mad.
But you're also wonderful and beautiful, and we appreciate every single one
all
of
those
you.
people that are watching these things, all those people that are watching these things, and we have met and we have spent time with, for example, at Leeds Horror Film Festival. Hi everyone, how are we doing? I still can't get over the Necronomicus.
The Necronomicus, yes.
Love it.
Yes.
Love the Necronomicus. I can't even say it. Probably teethy.
It's been a funny one though, season 4, because we started it last year. We had Hawk the Slayer, and then we had the interview with Stephen Lambert, and Stephen Lambert now is unfortunately no longer with us.
He passed away.
And it does seem as like we were one of the last people to sort of interview him before we passed away.
We didn't start Series 4 this year. You started Series 4 last year. 2022. A season that has taken 2 years.
2 years, and that's just simply because we didn't get around to doing a Christmas special last year. So I just did Die Hard. I just did Die Hard on my own, and sort of said, right, next year we're doing the Apple.
And
yes, we finally did the Apple this year.
Yes, we did. Die Hard is very definitely a Christmas birthday.
Yeah. We did Sword of Sherwood Forest, a Robin Hood film that I'd never heard of until you introduced it to me. And it gives an excuse to talk about Robin Hood.
And Hammer.
And Hammer in general. We've done The Wicker Man, which I really enjoyed doing, despite Studio Canal being quite difficult in terms of copyright, but let's not go down that rabbit hole because I will be here all night ranting about that.
That might be a video all in and of itself, to be fair.
Well, it's just me just angrily shouting into a camera for half an hour.
Shouting at the moon.
And of course there was the Leeds Horror Film Festival, which
was brilliant.
Which was great. You know, we did The Blood on Satan's Claw, we did The Thing,
From Beyond the Grave.
We did the Stephen King documentary,
which is now out.
It's now out
on Blu-ray, available, and yeah, please go and watch that. We thought it was very, very good.
The Virgin Witch, which, funnily enough, has had quite a surprising number of views. So it's clearly got a reputation.
I mean, considering that we didn't stick around for it.
Yeah, it's.
I really, really don't know why people wanted to watch that,
Well,
or our review of it.
Well, I can think of two reasons why people would want to watch the Virgin Witch.
No, you can think of two reasons. I can think of 3 words. Gratuitous female nudity.
Oh, and then there was the collection of short films that we looked at as well.
Really good.
They were really, really good. So, yeah, season 4's been an absolute cracking year for us.
Yeah.
Really.
Thank you very, very much for
sticking with us.
Yeah. With us and watching this rubbish.
Hey, we strive to bring top quality rubbish. It's not just any old shit. It's
fair point. Fair point, really. Fair point. Yeah.
So, in terms of season 5, we've got a few ideas of what we'd like to do.
Yes.
It really depends on whether or not we can continue to use the bunker, because the building where the bunker is situated may or may not be getting closed down. So we might
have to find ourselves a new bunker.
We may have to relocate at some point.
The bunker will regenerate.
Yes. You know, whether or not we, I don't know.
Well, no, it's either that or we'll find the secondary control.
Yeah, we'll find a way. We'll find it.
Worry not about these things,
because we enjoy doing this. I mean, we're really good mates in real life. To be honest, if we weren't filming this, we'd still be hanging around on a Friday night.
More
anyway.
than likely. I mean, let's put it this way: we've just spent time in another pub in Leeds, spending 15 minutes talking about Shaft.
Yeah. Speaking about John Shaft. Go on, what was that line from Shaft in Africa?
No, we're not going there. We're not.
Something about the size of John Shaft's shaft, wasn't it? Blaxploitation trilogy. Bit of Pangria, maybe. Superfly.
Sweet Max Badass song.
Yeah.
Or if we want to go horror, we can always do Blackula. Or Blackenstein.
Or if you want to throw in a bit of Kung Fu, Jim Kelly in Black Belt Jones 2.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be nice.
Deplorable dubbing and all.
Still want to do Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires.
Yes, I think that's a shoe-in.
That is a shoe-in. Possibly for next year, we'll wait and see. I really, really want this, because next year on the 8th of April, I really, really, really want us to celebrate Rex Manning Day.
Celebrate what, sorry?
Rex Manning Day.
What's Rex Manning Day?
Oh, you'll find out.
Oh, okay. Right, well, I think all that there's left to do is to sort of say a very Merry Christmas to you all.
Have a lovely, lovely New Year. We will see you in the New Year, hopefully very, very quickly.
Because we've got lots of ideas of what we would like to do for future episodes.
Yeah, we need to pay off another couple of long-running references.
Yes. Although trying to get him to do another Godfrey Ho film is probably not going to happen.
It's not happening.
I've got more chance of getting him to watch The Apple again, or Virgin Witch. Although, seeing as we're doing Doctor Who, Dimensions in Time, we've mentioned that a few times.
Never happening. Never happening. Never happening.
Right, I think I've we've tortured you enough now.
You know that ounce of goodwill that you always have?
Yes.
Yeah, it's now gone.
Oh, okay. And on that bombshell, it's time for us to go and draw season 4 to a close, and to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we will see you next year, 2024, for season 5. All the best.